Hey, hope you guys are all enjoying all those goofy adventure clips. I keep adding to sometimes the beginning and the endings, these emails being read out. I've got so many video clips from so many different adventures. It's a little overwhelming. There's so many. There's so much. I wish I could just share it all, but it would probably take years. But I'll keep sharing as many as the adventure clips as I can for all you people that aren't familiar with this lifestyle in this country. Now listen to this one. What do we got? Alright, here we go. My name is Michael. This story occurred in 1992 in Alaska on the Copper River near Chitna. Chitna is a town that time forgot. A salmon fishing paradise. I went there with my army buddies to catch as much as we were allowed and explore the Alaskan outback. We got much more than we expected, as you'll see. Saying this land has not seen a human in many years is an understatement. We found a guided boat to take us upriver on the side no one really ever goes. A perfect ledge flat and winding up to a 78-foot tall cliff behind us. Well, we settled in for a day of fishing. Let me tell you, we brought them in. The day wore on and everyone except me wanted to return to base camp. Call it whatever, but I opted to stay there alone with 1,000 miles of primeval wilderness behind me and a river in front of me. I settled in with no fire. Turned out it was a good idea. Fished for a few hours more. Beautiful is not the word of the roar of the river 60 feet away and 1,000 campfires 100 yards away on the other side of the river. I was utterly and completely alone. I settled into my sleeping bag I'd strung between two rocks and went to sleep. Sometime later I heard it, a sound like a giant walking on 2 feet through the wood above me, right above me. It crashed through the trees and stopped at the cliff's edge. I couldn't see a thing. It was pitch black up there, but it was there. That much my instincts told me, and close. I had 3 choices. Jump in the 2-degree river, and well, Ice Cube comes to mind. My second choice was to hide, where I was alone on a flat rocky outcropping, or fight. Being young and in the army, I chose to fight. 70 feet above me was something from another world entirely. Huge, and probably pretty hungry. I must have been insane that night. So it moved closer to the edge. I guessed it could see me now, and I could see it. Huge. I guess 10 feet tall and on 2 legs completely black. It must have made itself known to the other side of the river as a chorus of voices came from my rear. It's funny when you're okay with dying. You're calm, very calm. I didn't know it at the time, but it wasn't alone either. I guess they travel at times in groups. A 30-30 and a bayonet, lucky me. It started right after the other one showed up. Rocks came down. I moved to a corner where they couldn't hit me with them. Roars and a kind of chattering came next. One of them was on the ledge now, I could see him clearly. An almost human face surprised me, to tell you the truth. He saw me just as a shot rang out from the other side of the river. The thing ran to the furthest rock, screaming at the other side of the river. I finished the job. He lay there before me, a few yards away, motionless. The other one went berserk on seeing this, tearing up the trees above me. He ran back into the forest. I didn't hear anything the rest of the night. The morning was something very different, though. Just before dawn, a boat showed up and took me off the ledge. I wasn't given a choice in the matter, didn't want one either. On the way out of there, I looked back and saw 3 of them standing on the cliff above where I was. I was told never to return to that place again. I didn't. If someone would have told me why no one ever goes to that far side of the river, well, it would have saved me the issue. I was told to shut up about the issue, and well, I've never told anyone until now. If you would tell this story and tell them to stay off the far side of the river there, and probably don't like people. Michael. Well, that was a different kind of story, Michael. A little vague, missing out quite a few details that your average person would want to ask you, such as who came and got you in the boat, who took you away, what did it look like, did you go up and take a look at it, did it get flung into the water, did somebody grab it and drag it away, what happened, man? It sounds like a bit of a story, without all of the typical detail that might be added in, right? I'm not calling you a liar, but I am definitely inquiring about more detail than what you shared with us if it was the actual killing of the frickin' Sasquatch with a couple of rifles. But thanks for sending that in, and if you can maybe add a little more to it, we'd probably appreciate it if you want to email back and email back with some more details of what possibly went down that night, okay? I mean, I have a stack of stories that thick of shootings to relate all you, but like I said earlier, they're on a stack of paper, they're not on my phone, and I'm usually pretty scattered daily, right? I got so many things to do, and I launch myself out of the house and don't return until dark. And when I am at home, I'm working away at home as well, so but I'll get to them. But anyway, let me share this another one. It's getting cold. My feet are freaking numb. The sun's down, and I want to get some more of these emails shared while I'm here. I was a baby at the time, so I was in the presence, but this was my family that saw it. This was in a very small town in Vermont that has a lot of side roads, and before a GPS, it was easy to get lost. I personally gotten lost in that town myself. My mother was driving down the road and they got lost. So they were on an unfamiliar road and they kept driving. About a mile after the incident, my brother turns to my mother and says, "Did you see that?" And my mother was like, "Oh my God, you saw that too." Now this is a small town in Vermont, so trust me, there's plenty of mountains and plenty of woods for these things to live in. That's why when those idiots from Finding Bigfoot went up there and they were shocked at the mountains in Vermont, come on, we're the Green Mountain State for Christ's sakes. They both described seeing the exact same thing, a 6 to 7 foot tall, lean, probably juvenile, hairy man. It was covered from head to toe and hair, but it had a face that was sunken in. When I asked, "Are you sure it wasn't a man in a ghillie suit?" she said, "Absolutely, positively not. The face was different and it was hair, definitely not a ghillie suit. It disappeared in a matter of seconds after them seeing it. So being in the presence of that at the time is definitely cool. I wish I had been big enough to see it." So fast forward to years later, I'm sitting down with my buddy who is a former game warden, and he's a pretty straight shooter, and I had mentioned the possible existence of Bigfoot. I told him I knew people that had seen one, and he said, "Yeah, they're definitely out there." So being a game warden, I asked him why wouldn't the government acknowledge these things, and when he gave me the answer, everything came to light. He said the same reason why when you see wolves or we see cats up in the trees, our bosses tell us, "No, you didn't." Or, if they find a body of a dead wolf or cat, they bury them. It's so that the land doesn't become protected, because at that point, the government becomes a lot busier if you find a rare species. That made the utmost sense in my eyes. I really do hope to have a sighting someday. I drive a lot of back roads. I always have my head on a swivel, hoping one day to see one. My mother says if you would ever go out looking for him, you're not going to find them. It's just a chance occurrence, because she didn't believe in it before she saw it. Have a great day, and thanks for sharing the stories. Tony Zeman. D-Z-I-E-M-A-N. All right, Tony, thanks for that. I hope I didn't read it too awkwardly. I'm not the smoothest reader at times, you guys. And sometimes, most of these emails aren't broken up into paragraphs, and the punctuation's not the best, but we do the best we can, right? What else do we got? All right. Steve, thank you for your channel and doing this. I found your channel about 2 months ago or so. Here's my questions. And here's the memory/story. My name is Kevin. Full name is blank, blank, blank. I only use my first name. Thank you, sir. No problem. Question first. Number 1. Could buck fever account for the amount of fear some experience while witnessing these things? Buck fever. I don't think so. You see, what buck fever is, and I've seen plenty of people have those symptoms. Buck fever is when somebody has so much adrenaline, so much excitement, and that big moment they've been anticipating is going down, and they get all nervous, and they bumble and fumble, and they just can't quite put it together and pull it off. Making that calm, cool, collected, accurate shot, because their nerves, they just lost their nerve. They're too excited, and the adrenaline got the best of them, and they can't calm down. But buck fever is not caused from fear. Okay? Buck fever is definitely not fear. Number 2, could eye shine, like deer, gators, or domestic cats, attribute to the glowing red, yellow, or yellowish orange eyes? People see sometimes witnessing these Sasquatch at night or late evening. It's something different. The reflection of the eyes of game animals, it's a reflection. It's a reflection of light. Literally, basically, 99.9% of these experiences of people seeing glowing eyes are just that. They're glowing eyes, glowing on their own. red, orange, yellow, green, bluish green, have been various colors, and it hasn't been from flashlights. It's from creating their own source. Their own source is what is creating those glowing eyes. It's not a reflection, so that is something else. I'll tell you what, right? But there are beings, there are things out there, creatures out there, insects that do pull off glowing on their own too, right? So let's face it, nothing's impossible, right? Number 3, if did not witness as claimed, yet shotguns went off. Okay, hold on. If did not witness, bracket, as claimed, comma, yet shotguns went off, bracket, why would a U.S. Army Ranger sniper carry 3 or 4 high-power weapons with him from that day forward into the field, no matter camping, hunting, or hiking? I'm not certain. Maybe I should jog my memory what you're talking about. That's a confusing question for me, sir. Let me read it one more time. If did not witness, why would a U.S. Army Ranger sniper carry 3 or 4 high-power weapons with him from that day forward? If did not witness, then from what day forward? I don't understand. Into the field. Don't know. Number 4, have you heard the saying, speak with the devil? I'm sure you have. Could speaking about them bring more encounters, or simply a case of urban sprawl? More people in nature equals more encounters to these beings. Oh, I don't know about that. All I am familiar with is people who have seen these things tend to see them more than once. Speaking of them, it doesn't seem to have much of an effect on your luck of running into them, I don't think. Myself, not familiar with it anyways. Here comes my token helicopter. My story / memory. It was late August 1975, Irish Hills, not a mile or two as the crow flies from Manchester, Michigan. I was 7 years old. My family owned a 10-acre farm that we co-opted with the farmer my father bought the property from on his 400 acres of land. Here in Florida and southern states, I know they called it sharecropping, but then in Michigan, I understood it was a co-op. Anyway, my folks left one evening after my grandmother came over to babysit me. I'd been riding my mini bike all day and had already ate dinner. Took my bath and was fixing to lay down on the couch, wait for the TV to warm up. Remember that? And watch some shows. My grandmother sat in the corner of the living room away from the window, but towards the television. The couch where I was sitting was to her left. I could see the television clearly in front of me. Off my right, I could see out into the backyard, into the cornfield that year. The living room picture window was toward my 2 o'clock position. I could lift my head from watching television and look out the window. My cat was on the couch, back behind my head. He later disappeared for 3 days. My outdoor dogs, a Malamute and a Beagle, had been barking and kind of acting weird most of the late afternoon and early evening, until my dad went out and calmed them down prior to leaving. So anyway, I heard the dogs barking outside and then shut up almost instantly. The window was partially cracked open, and the crickets had stopped. I was a farm kid, so I noticed these things. I sat up on the couch and looked out the window and freaked out. All I could manage to do was get my grandma and point my right arm out towards the outdoors. She freaked out too, jumped up and was like, what? Looked out the window, pulled the curtains, and claimed later to my parents, I found out years later, nothing was there. But then I also found out, she said, I was pale white, like I'd seen a ghost. I saw this huge shadow of what seemed to look human, but with glowing red eyes staring right in the window at me. The next day I took my 12-gauge shotgun with me, yelled back into the house after going outdoors that the garbage and wet dog smell was still very strong, stunk to high heaven. I never found anything around the house. The odor started dissipating as the day wore on. My dogs and the farmer's cows in the field across from the area I had seen what I saw out the window the night before settled. Okay, this is brutal. It's so hard to read these sometimes when the paragraphs are all completely off. I sound like an idiot. Let me try it again. The odor started dissipating as the day went on. My dogs and the farmer's cows in the field across from the area, I had seen what I saw out the window the night before settled. That's the story memory. Now, some interesting facts, Steve. I figured these out over the years. My father had built a back porch that was 3 feet off the ground directly under that living room picture window from inside the house. If he would be standing on the back porch, his head and shoulders would have been roughly the height of the red glowing eyes I saw, but his shoulders were nowhere near as wide. Plus, he had a neck. The shadow I saw had no neck. But here's my point. The picture window was about 7 feet wide, from about 4 feet off the ground. My father was 6 feet tall at the time, weighed about 240, and built like a truck. His eyes would have been the same height through the window from inside the house. Steve, that puts this thing at 9 feet tall at least. I get chills to this day when I think about it. It was in the backyard, about halfway between the cornfield and the house. Around about 35 to 40 feet between them. So it was about 10 or 15 feet from the glass. About 5 months later, during that blizzard of 76, my folks were playing on a board game with me in the dining room. We heard a scratching and whimpering at the back door. Dad looked out the window and both dogs had stepped over the fence and wandered in the house. Dad opened the door and oh my God, the smell of the garbage and wet dog was back. We could smell it as it filled the house, through the snow and the wind. Okay, there's capitals. There's capitals on almost every third word in here, you guys. That's why it's awkward. I'm sorry. But I'm gonna finish it. We could smell it as it filled the house, through the snow and the wind. My beagle shot past my Malamute and ran to the corner of the couch. In the living room, about 50 feet from the door, my Malamute, at about 170 pounds, tried to hide between the washer and dryer in the laundry room, whimpering. All I know is my father had been like, what the F, right? So he gets on all his gear, grabs his 10 gauge, and goes outside in a blizzard. We hear the thunder from a blast from that gun. My mother shouted for me to go into the bedroom and lock the door. She grabbed the phone off the wall, calling our nearest neighbor, about a mile up the road. A little bit later, I hear my father come in the house. I hear my neighbor come in the house, after a couple of blasts from his 12 gauge in our driveway. Now you have to understand, Steve, our front yard was 2.5 acres long to the road, so he could have been 100 yards yet from the house, and we hear his gun go off. So I couldn't tell you exactly how far he was from the house, but when he came barreling through the back door, I hear him say to my father, I saw it. I managed to get a few shots off at it. It was running away fast, real fast, on 4 legs now. Must have cleared your front yard, Bob, my dad's name, in like 5 seconds or less. Saw me and started growling loud and coming my way, then veered off after I fired. I heard my dad say, when I got a shot at it with Bertha, his nickname for his 10 gauge, he was on 2 legs coming at me halfway up the driveway. I know this email got long, sorry about that, but I got to thinking, Steve, you ask questions sometimes silly to try to dig up more info, so I added the rest of the story, as I remember it, from 45 years ago. I remember the next day the sheriff, local Michigan State Trooper, and a green Jeep I later learned was a Michigan DNR Ranger. They all talked to my father and our neighbor, the other big guy on the street, about 6'6", 300 pounds. Yeah, another truck like my father. And that was the end of it. Nobody, at least in front of me, ever talked about it again. But spring planting in 1976 was a bit different. It seemed all the local farmers around us started having shotguns and rifles on their tractors with them that year, out in the fields. Same with harvest that year. My father started complaining to my mother about the drive after putting in for another transfer at Ford, which they gave him, back to Dearborn from the Saline Ford plant he had gotten transferred to just 5 years before. Lastly, Steve, my father just recently died in 2019. I had to have been the one who searched out and requested all, for as many as I could get, military records back from 1953. I found one thing odd, very odd. He never told me or my mother anything at all about his military background, both full-time and reserves and guard. My father was supposedly a tech sergeant. However, especially back in the 50s and early 60s, I kept finding colonels, full bird colonels with flight status, and generals signing off on all his orders. I'm like, what the F? These military high-ups don't give a rat's ass about the same buck sergeant. Then I found a paper stuck between some files. Instead of having a black line through my father's MOS, again signed off by some general or colonel, it said what he did. It turns out he had 2 MOSs. I guess in the 1950s, as the Army required guys like my father to have a day job for him that equaled a dump truck driver. Below that, however, it had an additional MOS, U.S. Army, marksman sharpshooter, top secret security clearance, highest priority special services. What we now call today a U.S. Army Ranger Special Ops Sniper Top Secret Recon or something to that effect. My point, the man never talked about anything because he could not, but he was never afraid of anything. Yet after that incident, every time we went to the field, camping, hiking, hunting, whatever, he had a minimum of 3 high-power weapons with him that could stop a charging rhino dead in its tracks, sometimes even his automatic. Years later, he never told exactly what happened that night. All I know is it all started after that first one. Dark black and brown shadow with the blood-red eyes. I saw that night in the living room window in August 1975. Then the blizzard of 76 in the Irish Hills just outside Manchester, Michigan. After which we moved in 1977, supposedly for Pop's job. He still went hunting every year. I think more to get out in the wilds. He only ever took a doe in 76. Still have her head on the wall mount to this day. He did stop hunting, camping, hiking anywhere, except our old farm area or up into northern Michigan. I still go out in the outdoors. I love them. I'm former military too. I don't really think about it much anymore, excluding this here and when I'm gaining more knowledge about these things through your channel. My head's on a swivel while I'm in the swamp, the woods, or the fields. I've had some odd events out there since the 70s, but nothing like any of that from then. I haven't seen anything since then. Had some odd occurrences, like I said, right up to 2018, but again, not like 1975 or 76 when I was a kid. Thanks for doing this. Hope you get your new platform before YouTube catches on to what you're doing and boots you off. Again, sorry for the email got long. Just thought I'd let you and the other viewers know a bit more about what happened to me so many years ago. Thought it might be relevant. Take care of those horses, my friend. They're beautiful animals, Kevin. Phew. Okay, thanks, Kevin. Thanks for sending that email, man. And unfortunately, the way it was sent over, I mean, the paragraphs are all off. It didn't fit on my screen properly. And probably every third word starts with a capital. And it was a tough read, but I smashed through, got her done. And I hope by the time this makes a video, it makes sense when I read it out loud. But what an interesting man your father must have been. What a dedicated guy too, right? To be able to keep his mouth shut and not share anything with his family all the way to death is something else. I can't say I would be able to do the same. I'm not much for secrets. I do keep secrets for sure, but I think by the time the end of the ride comes up, I would probably be cracking open some of the things I've been holding back from my deathbed. If it wasn't going to harm my community or harm my country, right? But if it was to pass on knowledge to my family to assist them keeping safe, I'd probably share it. I'd probably share it all. Now, well, everything's still recording. Might as well keep going. Oh yeah, a few people emailed me about links to get the to buy the quality hats from, and a couple of people I think from Tuscaloosa said it might have been from Gander. No, I wasn't Gander. I was there actually the year it closed down, and it wasn't Woods and Water either. I was buying a bulk from a place in a small strip mall on the right-hand side, heading north, I think, or west on McFarland. High side of the highway, yeah, going northwest. And I don't think it's even a business anymore. It's just one of those typical places that they bought the hats and t-shirts and sweaties for everybody and printed them up. And I haven't got a message out to Cuz yet. I'll message Cuz when I get home, hopefully. But if any of you other guys have got a good lead on some good, solid quality stuff, you know, from the U.S., let me know. Because past few years, I've bought some dog shit from China. It obviously came from China and some other countries that were less than the quality that we enjoy, right? Because I gotta get button gear and make a bunch more of those hot hats. They went like freaking like wildfire last time, and I just haven't got around to doing it. But it's one of my to-do things coming up. Hi Steve, love your YouTube channel. I've been mountain biking in Marin County, off and on for decades. My favorite mountain is the one nearest my house, less than 3 miles away. For the past 15 years, I've made hundreds of trips up and down this 1,500-foot high mountain. You'd call it a hill. The south side of the hill has houses at the base of it. But above that is open space for hiking, biking, and horse riding. The north side is mostly state park, then about 19,000 acres of undeveloped private property, mostly wooded ranch land. In the summer months, I tend to ride in the late afternoon, reaching the top around sunset. There's a 5-mile long trail weaving through the state park side, dropping down 1,500 feet from the summit back down to sea level. We're right beside San Francisco Bay. Several times I've heard the tree knocks, usually 3 loud knocks followed by silence, then 3 more knocks. A few times I've heard very large animals crashing through the woods near the trail. Once I found a bear footprint, not much bigger than a human footprint, but clearly not human. Many times I had the feeling something was watching me. There have been mountain lion sightings up there too. One time, though, I had quite the scare. Coming down the trail at twilight by myself, miles from home, I could hear whoops coming from the hill above my right side of the trail, answered by whoops coming from the gully below the trail and to the left. There were 2 groups of them whooping back and forth at each other, but I couldn't see them. They're definitely not coyotes. I stopped for a second to ponder my situation. I could turn around and head back up the hill, but it would have been about walking pace, so I couldn't have outrun them. I was about 2/3 the way down, and downhill is much faster on a bike than uphill, so I went down. Obviously made it, hence the email. I'm certain these are Sasquatch, and I believe they know who I am. I have a healthy respect for them, but I'm not terrified of them because, for whatever reason, they've chosen to leave me alone. If they want you, they'll get you. I've had dozens of other experiences with them on that mountain, but this was the only time I heard vocalizations. I still haven't actually seen one and don't really care to. Thanks for your time, Steve, and keep up the good work getting the truth out about these beings. All right, man. Thanks for that email. Appreciate it. And if you're having numerous experiences in that area, I'm sure somebody else is too. And you're right. And if they want you, they're going to get you. But it's the things that are getting people is what we want to find out about too at the same time, right? Dear sir, I live in Central Florida. I'm an old lady now. You're not an old lady. You are a more experienced, knowledge-filled human being, man. But when I was 13, while riding my horse in the woods with a friend bareback, we were fooling around at an area where a causeway was being built. Where the woods met the Gulf sand was piles of sand about 20 feet high extended out into the water. We rode up on the very top. My horse, a 17-hand American saddlebred who was never spooked by anything, froze. I looked out, and about 50 feet in front of us, a hairy, large, 2-legged, broad-shouldered creature was bent down in the sawgrass. He seemed to be brushing away the grass, looking for food, I guess. It was high tide, and the wind was just blowing out of the west. Just then, the horse reared up and screamed, pawed the air. We both slipped off. My friend and the horse ran for home. The beast looked up, stood up, and took 2 large steps toward me. He was having problems with feet stuck in the mud. I'm frozen but not afraid. As we got to the edge of the mangroves, it turned and took 5 steps away, now on solid ground, until it disappeared into the mangroves. When I looked up, its hair around his face was wet, and it curled. I could see the large flat nose, broad mouth, and no neck, large brow ridge, and the color was black with sun-bleached otter-brown hair. I could not see the eyes, but it looked like a linebacker. Muscles huge and rippling legs were very long. It walked, tilted forward as the arms hung down past its knees. It seemed to be about 7 feet tall. I stayed there for a few minutes, looked down the shore to a mound, and there, crushed behind some sparse mangroves, I saw one. Time to go. The next day back to my brother in our small boat, I did not tell him. HWY. There in the mud impression, so I was not lazy. Till this day, if I am in the wood, I tell him to go in peace, and I'm no threat, leave me alone. Thank you, and please do not give my name out. All right, thank you very much for that email. Really appreciate it. And I haven't ran into one of my horses yet. I don't really crave to either. I don't imagine either one of my horses would have too good of a reaction to seeing one of these things. And if I was in the middle of nowhere on horseback and they dumped me and took off without me, I'd be a little pissed off.